Hi, I'm Tamika Hanna.
And I'm Shahid Mustafa.
And we are
Black English Vernacular on 101.5 KTAL-FM every Monday from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's hot. It's hot.
What is it today? It's 90.
It's hot.
It's 99.
What's the matter anymore? Super hot. Super hot. Maximum hot. Maybe not maximum, but, we've been dealing with triple digits or very close to triple digits now for about 10 days, I feel like.
It's been triple digits. It says 99 right now, but again, triple digits for 10 days?
Yeah.
At least.
And it's interesting. One day I got in the car and it read out that it was 117. And I was like, what? But maybe it's because the car is black. Like I had to sit there for a minute because like 117 can't be. And it eventually found its way down to reasonable 105. Or I guess more realistic 105. And I was like, is that because I'm moving and the car's not hot? But in either case, we've been dealing with some heat. And, that can be a challenge when you are trying to grow food. But since we're trying to grow food in the desert, we should assume that we're going to have to deal with the heat. And I guess in some ways, we should also assume that we're going to have to deal with water scarcity. And so today was Water Day, which is a big day if you are practicing agriculture and dependent on water from the Rio Grande. And so today we received our allotment for water, which this year was a 4-inch allotment. And so when you take into consideration that in years past that people had an annual allotment, and by annual I mean like during the warm season or during when we get to experience the river, the water in the Rio Grande, and it's not just a boulevard as it is for most of the year. But when we actually have water in the Rio, in the past, people were used to receiving an allotment over the season of 3 to 4 feet of water. And so to be limited to 4 inches for the season, this is not like 4 inches and then you get another 4 inches every time. This is it. Like, this is the water that's being allotted. And I think it really speaks to the level of crisis with water, like where we are, in all honesty. And I think that it's not something that's really making the news in the way that it should. And when it makes the news, it makes it in these ways that I think people are confused about what we're really dealing with. So, watering day, I mean, the experience is, so we generally use drip irrigation or very controlled flood irrigation, which is, we have a discharge pipe which allows us to manage the water in a way where we can kind of almost gauge, to the minute how long we need to run the water, or we can at least see it. Like we can see how far the water has gone down the rows, where it is in the embankment, and know when to turn it off. It's a whole different story when you are opening those floodgates, literally, like another word that you use but don't necessarily experience. Well, we opened some floodgates today. And that required a lot of stewardship, a lot of management, running around with a spade. I mean, we watered we watered 4 acres, a little over 4 acres actually total. 1 acre was a pecan orchard, which was not as challenging to manage. But the vegetable crop acres, you really have to be on top of your embankments and your dams and your water flow. You can't, the pressure is what it is. You can somewhat limit, but once you open that floodgate, that's it. It's you literally running down the road to make sure that the integrity of your beds are strong enough to hold and contain that water, that your back end didn't breach and you end up with water all over the place that you didn't want. At first, you don't want to waste it because you do only have a limited amount, but also because it becomes a mess. And you got yourself and the goats and everybody else, in 4 inches of water. Nobody likes that, or more. But part of that experience was really just thinking about it, the entire time, how important this resource is, how powerful it is, and how necessary it is for us to live and survive in this environment. And considering the level of scarcity, how little people are actually aware of what is going on with water right now. And there's so much going on with water right now.
I was out there, of course, today, with a video camera, wanting to see this water. Didn't quite know what to think when you shared with me that it was watering day. Like, I'm not sure, but then you expressed that it was a day. So literally watering day. That's it. No more after today. And then, that's when I was like, that's odd. It feels like if the Rio is opening up, you would have more days, But then you explained it a little to me, and I just in seeing you out there, I see the importance of it. So it was when the pecan orchard was being watered first, and there was so the floodgates to the vegetable crops weren't open yet. And so I saw that there was, where you would open the gates, I saw that some water was coming through, right? And so I was over there capturing the water opening up to the pecan orchard, and then I saw you when water was coming to the vegetable crop, and it wasn't the vegetable crop's turn yet, but yet some water was coming through. I saw you hurry up and grab a spade and make a way so they could reach your rows sooner. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, I had to divert it because there was a breach. One of the gates must have been, these are just, metal plates covering a discharge hole, and there's nothing really tight or sealed about it.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We have an audience of kittens who have decided to wake up from their nap and be a part of the show. But anyway, I think they're surprised too.
So yeah, so you were trying to so there was a breach with the floodgate part.
Right, there was a breach, and And yeah, so some water came through, and so I had to divert it real quick into one of the areas where we actually wanted water. Otherwise, I was going to be just working in mud, in a matter of minutes. And it was just so fast because it always looks manageable at first because you just get like a little trickle, and I learned from the past of thinking that it would be okay and finding out that it wasn't. And so, yeah, that's when I had to sort of create another diversion. But it went well. I mean, and we really needed that. So what you said in that it was watering day, historically, traditionally, there were multiple watering days throughout the season. And so people were able to use the water from the Rio Grande for agricultural purposes. And that's something that created in this valley a cultural existence of agriculture. Like the water was a part of the life in this valley. And when the water got dammed up at Caballo, that really changed not necessarily the culture, but the way that culture existed. And so people became way more dependent on groundwater, using water from wells. And I think that was stark. I think people, especially when you look at, I mean, many of us have seen like what happens when the pecan orchards water. I mean, people are often taken aback with how much water they see coming out of, not coming out of the sky and not coming out of the river, but coming out of the ground, which is almost like coming out of nowhere, for a lot of people. And how much is being used to flood the orchards, right? And that used to happen on occasion, when there wasn't going to be water from the river and pecan producers had to continue to maintain the moisture in their soil. Not just pecans, I mean alfalfa, onions, any crop, was dependent on the use of groundwater as a supplement. But now we are literally at the point where groundwater is the main source for agricultural production in this valley. And the river water is a supplement. And there's a couple reasons why. With everybody being so dependent on the water coming out of the ground, the water table begins to get lower and lower. And the lower that water table gets, the more minerals people are extracting and basically using to irrigate crops. That's a really hard thing to do because plants don't like a lot of salt, but that's what we're ending up with. And this is the first year that I've seen in a physical and visible way the level of salts that are in the groundwater right now. And it was different when I was doing some work in El Paso or Socorro. I used to see that all the time, and it was kind of normal. This year is the first time where I've looked at my beds and they've had that white crust on them that I hadn't really seen at this level, at least this early. I mean, it's only June, right? And so usually that would be from a series of watering from a well. But in all honesty, I've never been this dependent on a well for irrigation. I've always had some access to water from the river. And if I was using well water, it was from a well that was close enough to the riverbed where I wasn't affected with the high salts. So the combination of the lack of snowmelt to recharge the river and the infrequency of river flow has really created a crisis in this area of not just water suitable for agriculture, but I'm concerned that our groundwater becomes less and less potable water, less and less water that we can just use on a daily basis. I mean, I think people can see it on their faucets. They see the mineral buildup. I think most of us have that. And we talk about, oh, this is hard water, add some water softeners. That only goes so far, because that same water also returns back to our watershed bioaccumulated, right? So one of the solutions that we're applying is, we're doing a system where we're going to be adding some hydrogen to our system. And what that does is that allows the plant roots, the hydrogen allows the plant roots to deal with some of the stress that the salts create around the plant roots, so they don't sort of go into drought. Like what happens when there's a lot of salt around your plant roots is the plant is kind of confused and thinks like, maybe this is a drought and I need to go dormant. Maybe I'm not going to get enough water, even though it's surrounded by water, but it's surrounded by high mineral and high salt water. So adding some curative that's hydrogen based, or it's like a hydrogen peroxide, and it's still suitable for organic application, but that's also got its limits, right? Anytime you're adding to it, there's still an evaporative process. So whatever is left behind after evaporation is then what you have in your soil. And so consequently, not just our water is salty, but our soil is salty from years of using high saline or high mineral water. And so this is, for a producer who's actually trying to grow food that the community can eat and not just a commodity that's being sold to someone else, or even a food that's going to California and making its way back. That's challenging. It's challenging. And one of the perceptions that people have had for a long time is that, well, we just, we need to stop using so much water in pecans or in agriculture. Because that's sort of like it's where people can see it. It's where people can see the water disappearing, right? And so that's become sort of an easy target. In fact, that is, in order for New Mexico to abide by the agreement that it has now accepted with Texas to deliver more water, more acre feet of water, that's the place that the Office of State Engineers or the state is sort of looking to recover enough water or to release enough water to Texas by not making it available to agriculture through different programs.
So that's part of the reason why we only got 4 inches.
Correct. Yeah, and this has been happening over the years. This isn't really new. Partly because there hasn't been a lot of snow, and so there's less water available statewide.
Okay.
The irony in that is that that's only becoming an issue for people north of the dam recently. Like in the last year, I've heard people from Albuquerque say, "There's no water in the Rio," and I go, "What? Yeah, there's always no water in the Rio," but they're not used to that, and there was concern because they could see real drop off because there wasn't enough snowmelt coming from the Colorado Rockies. And so that is the tributary that feeds all of this, that feeds us, right? And so because of that, they are also experiencing water scarcity in a way that they hadn't. But like I say, for me, the Rio Grande is Rio Grande Boulevard most of the year. And it's a river, when it's a river. That's been my experience. So having these conversations are very nuanced, because you have that sort of encroachment on the water. And then you have the conversation that people are having around data centers.
Of course.
And that water use, right? Which is something to be concerned about, for lots of different reasons. I'm not even sure if people are concerned for the right reasons, but I think there are plenty of reasons to be concerned about the amount of water that they're proposing that they need to operate the data center, and also the kind of water that they're suggesting that they're going to use. But the thing that really, I think, has contributed to this issue that doesn't get talked about a lot is local and regional infrastructure. One of those things being just in the way that the water is delivered. Some of these old irrigation ditches or dams, like I know, for example, when we were farming out in Mesilla, the dam was still a dam that wasn't paved. And gophers used to create these water tunnels leading from the dam to people's property, to the point where when the water did come through the dam, it created these sinks. Like the water literally, like people had to bring in soil to replace or to fill in the hole that was created by these gophers and this water. But had that ditch been paved, that wouldn't have been a problem, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure issues that create water loss that people aren't thinking about. One of them also being municipalities. Like there's lots of leaks in a lot of the sewage systems and the water delivery systems that we use that go relatively unchecked because they're old, terracotta, metal, things that break down over time but used to deliver water efficiently. Those things aren't being replaced. Most of that energy goes into new development. So you get new infrastructure there, but downtown and older parts of the city, you're not necessarily seeing that. And one of the indicators of that I was able to witness, well, two. One was personal, but the other one was over near the Three Crosses area. I can't remember the name of the street, but I used to always appreciate the trees on one side of the block. And I was like, wow, that's nice that they have these trees. And one day I went down there and they'd taken all the trees out. And I go, oh.
I know what you're talking about.
They just removed every single tree.
Yeah.
And the reason was that the tree roots were starting to disrupt the sewage infrastructure, the water infrastructure. And I got to peek. And I said, hold on, those old pipes, like that's what, so they were kind of doing piecemeal replacements, not the entire system, just piecemeal replacements of the old infrastructure. And in my mind, I was like, this has to be happening everywhere. Like there must be water leaks going on all the time.
Hold on, so you're saying the tree roots were affecting the old
pipes.
The old pipes.
Right.
So couldn't there have been a way to fix the old pipes, And,
they were fixing them where there were trees.
Okay.
But they were taking out the tree.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
the tree was the problem, not the old infrastructure.
See, that's what I'm thinking. Why not fix the old
So,
infrastructure to handle the trees?
well, that is the question that I think people need to be asking, because I didn't only see that in that place, I experienced it personally where we had an issue where we kept having backups, in our bathroom. And we thought, well, we don't have a tree, so I know there's no branches growing through the pipes. And so when we called the city to ask, if they could check, they literally told us, well, what you have to do first is repair all of your pipes going out to the main to ensure that there's not a problem there. When we checked, like we did, we had turnouts, plumbers came, everybody said, yeah, we can't find any problem. But we still had to do that. And we did it, right? We replaced all of our plumbing going out to the street. Problem still existed. And then they came and they, quote unquote, fixed it right in front of our house. They didn't go, there's a problem with this main, we need to replace this main. They fixed the area right in front of our house, and that was it. And I was thinking, is this how this happens? Like they're doing this piecemeal, right? They're kind of like fixing it where there's a problem, but probably there's a problem throughout the city with this old infrastructure.
I believe so, because of the challenges I used to have in my old, or where I used to live, which was downtown area, and me and all my neighbors and landlords, did what they could, but they're like, yeah, this is way above us. This is a city problem, and knew someone who moved close to downtown also phoned me one time. Is this a problem? It was a city problem. I'm like, yeah, that's bigger than us, and and yeah, they have to take care of it. The city does. I think there was a couple of months ago, and maybe not even a couple months ago. Remember when there was a very heavy rain? Or whenever actually there's a heavier rain, where it rains more than a couple minutes, and the streets flood quick.
Yeah, well, to me, that was from the very first time. When I moved here in 2006, I got to experience the monsoon season. And so it rained a lot, like heavy. And I would always see this flooding. And it was always, to me, I was like, why isn't this water being directed into a cistern? Like, why isn't there a system? If this is something that happens, why isn't there a system to collect and reuse this water? And then after that, I think maybe, and that was in 2006, maybe I've experienced two more.
20 years later. 20 years later. Okay.
And but not to that level. Like I haven't experienced another monsoon like that. And that was the time, like it was flooding. It was flooding here. It was flooding in El Paso. I remember this being the case. And in me, it just seemed like, well, there needs to, like, if this happens, that's a lot of opportunity for water harvesting. At least directing it to a treatment center. I wouldn't say directing it to the river, because it would just dry up because there's nothing to hold it, right? But those are the kinds of things, when you go east to west in this town. I know on Missouri, I've seen it on El Paseo, I've seen it on Spruce, where it's just like they become these flowing, rivers when we get a heavy rain. And these are, we're not talking about raining for days on end. And I know that is why we have these different water catchment systems, whether they be arroyos, which are more like naturally built, but still somewhat contained. And then there are other water catchment around. But water harvesting is what I think would be critical, to add to this community.
Do you think that water harvesting, that conversation of water harvesting, will become a serious conversation, a serious topic, knowing that, like for today, watering day, just one day of watering, so people are feeling that, are feeling the lack of,
Correct.
So
Well, I know in agriculture, water harvesting is done through improving soil health, and so that's what everybody's. That's kind of like the low hanging fruit. Adding more compost, creating healthier soil that can retain the water that's being used to grow crops. But in terms of cistern systems and dedicated infrastructure, whether in households or citywide, for collecting water to be repurposed and reused during those times, I'm assuming it's going to have to happen. But I don't hear a lot of conversation about that, and I don't hear the community demanding things like that. And that's where I think, as we started, when I said I don't think people are aware of the crisis that we're actually experiencing right now with water, not just from external or things that we might have some control over. Like I say, the data center, I think that brought up a lot of people's questions about water. But there are so many things that potentially contaminate or compromise our watershed. And I feel like there's also lots of uses beyond agriculture that are contributing to high evaporative rates affecting our water capacity and inventory.
when I saw the water release today, it was a spiritual experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It got me in a way that I don't think it ever has before. And mind you, like I always feel a way when I'm near water. I feel just a calm and a peace, and I'm moved. Today, I was moved to tears, but in a way that felt like, how long am I going to be able to experience this? And even touching the water, like, is that going to be a distant memory one day?
Good.
You
I
know?
mean, this is the desert for a reason, right? So there are sort of natural cycles of drought that contribute to the overall desertification of this area, which might be able to be mitigated if we take those things into account.
Yeah, I think I was thinking as far as like, my thought was on the data centers and was on the forever chemicals that they're putting in the water, and was in just my understanding and, from what I do know of how they're really affecting our water in a way that is going to make it hard for people to use.
Right.
And I think that's also why the emotions came.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the data center. Well, I was able to talk to one of the people who's working on the closed loop cooling system that is being proposed.
I don't know what closed loop cooling system. Closed loop. Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So what they're proposing is a cooling system because data centers produce a lot of heat, right? Computers just generate a lot of heat and, need a lot of energy. So all of that energy going into a concentrated space like that is going to require some level of refrigeration or cooling. So what they're proposing is a water-based system that keeps the place cool. And the idea is that they will initially fill this system with a lot of water, and it will be a closed loop system that continues to cool the plant.
Okay.
And
With the same water. They're
with
like,
the
oh,
same water.
We don't need to.
Right.
It's just the same water.
Correct.
Okay.
And so that was fascinating, to say the least, to me. And I'm like, wow, how's this work? Like, I want to know a little bit more about this. So I went to a job fair that they had in Santa Teresa, because that's where the I always almost say Planet Jupiter, Project Jupiter is happening, right? And this is an Oracle project. Larry Ellison, who also owns TikTok, right, and CBS. Just so everybody knows, that's the level of integrity that owns this project. So I went to ask the person that I was told would be the person to ask about this system. And what that person shared with me was that, to put it, I had on my overalls and my little farmer hat, looking kind of hayseedy. So I was just asking, like, explain this system to me, in simple terms. And what they told me is like, well, you know how a radiator works, like a car radiator, right? And you just like, it goes through and it goes back up and it kind of recycles and you're using that and using that. And I said, yeah, and I know that you have to refill them. And he said, yeah, there will be, we'll refill it. And I said, well, where's the water coming from? He said, oh, it's groundwater, but it's groundwater that's non-potable water.
Non-potable meaning?
It can't be used for consumption.
Got it. Okay.
Probably, or agriculture.
Okay.
So this non-potable water that they're saying that they're going to fill with, he told me that was coming from a sod producer. So somebody who grows grass basically to sell people. And so in my mind, immediately I was like, a sod producer. So what kind of chemicals was this sod producer using to ensure that they had the perfect green grass that they need to deliver to their customers? And he said, yeah, there's some TDS is a term, total dissolved solids, right? Could mean a lot of things. Generally, it can be as simple as a lot of minerals. It could also mean a lot of chemicals, right? So this water that they're getting from this sod producer, which is water that should not be reintroduced to the watershed, should not be reintroduced to groundwater because it's high in total dissolved solids, right? So this is what they're going to put into this cooling system, along with some detergents to break down the total dissolved solids. That way they can keep using this water without these solids becoming too big, basically, and then clog up the system. And so me, once again, not knowing anything, and I talked again. I said, so it's like this radiator. I said, so if it's operating like a radiator in this space and cooling, there's going to be some condensation, meaning that there's some evaporative capacity that's going to happen over time. I said, so does that mean that you're going to add more water? And he said, yeah, we'll have to add more. I said, so that means it's not a one-time fill. That means it's actually going to be multiple fills, and we don't know at what rate yet. And I said, but as you're dealing with these dissolved solids, and as this water evaporates and you're adding these detergents, then you're bioaccumulating all of these additives. Then what happens to that? Does that stay in the system? He said, no, we'll have to dump that. I said, okay, see, that's the challenge that I have. It's like, if you're going to have to dump that now produced water that you just produced in this facility, where are you going to dump it? And how are we going to ensure that there aren't any leaks? And if this system works like a radiator does, radiators leak all the time. So how are we ensuring the safety of the community's water just within this system? And this person said to me, well, you know how it works, man. Groundwater's groundwater. Everything gets in there. And I said, okay. That is the concern that I had. And I said, as a farmer, that's a concern that I have. But as a living human being in this community, that's also a concern that I have. And I walked away from there with the answer that I expected, but an answer different than I had hoped. Watering day. It's watering day. Remember, it's watering day.
It is watering day. Wow.
And a lot of people, okay, there's another tradition associated with watering day.
Yeah.
That I learned about.
Okay.
Usually, a watering day, depending on who you are, is usually celebrated with a 6, 12, 18, or 24 pack of Bud Light.
Oh my goodness. Really?
There's some watering. That's another part of watering day.
You know. So after being out there today, I was like, oh, this was a lot. I definitely, yes, I will make this an absolute tradition as well. But you know, hearing you talk about it honestly made me want to travel around and see other farmers and producers and how they're moving through watering day. It feels like, yeah, if this continues and drought continues to happen and just a lot of challenges around the water, I have a feeling that, yeah, people will pay attention to watering day and come out to help. Like, what spaces can we make sure water gets to, you know? And so, no, I would like to see what other people are doing, how they're handling and moving through their watering day.
Yeah, God bless them. I don't need to see it. I saw enough, but I have seen it. I've been involved, and
have you helped people?
I have. I've helped people.
How was that?
It's same. And this was on.
It's pretty chaotic.
No,
it kind of feels chaotic.
It just is what it is. It's a lot of water coming in, and you can do as best you can. And we didn't have a lot of leaks today. We actually did pretty good. I've been where there was a pretty serious breach, and you're literally like either sandbagging or trying to hurry up and shovel up enough soil to replace a crack. You know, in this system of sort of like mini dammed system that you have, and you're just depending on the integrity of your soil and your own engineering, right? And so, because there was different levels, if you notice, like there was one, the first section I was not as concerned about because
where the
I
watermelons and corn.
Correct, because those have really deep furrows, and so I was like, all right, if there's an issue, I can manage it. As we moved away to the lower sections where the squash, those can be washed out. Like if you're not careful, you end up losing all your furrows, and then that can expose, if you have plants in the ground, it will expose the roots and they'll just dry out.
And interesting, because I was like, oh, it's covering quite a bit more space over where the zucchinis, and you're right, the squash were. But also, you were moving really fast to harvest the zucchinis.
Yeah, and
water's coming.
And I was harvesting zucchini as the water was coming down the road, because I noticed, like, with zucchini, that's something that you notice every day. It's like, hey, there was no zucchini there 2 days ago. Now I better harvest this zucchini, or else it's going to be the size of my leg, in 2 days. And so, I just happened to notice that while watering, like, the water hasn't reached, let me harvest. And in that row and a half, I got 35 pounds of zucchini out there.
Yeah, that was a lot. And what about, yeah, because I was like, is he harvesting right now? And then I was like, oh, he's harvesting fast.
Yeah, and they were apparent. It wasn't hard to find them, and so that's kind of the thing about that crop. And squash bugs, of course, like I got to see how many, they show up, like those stink bugs, squash bugs, whatever you call them, they show up for the zucchini. And they show up at every stage. And I have to say, there was some level of satisfaction knowing that some of those guys were going to be drowned.
Yeah.
But not enough.
They'll be like, this isn't going to be.
Because I think they actually float. They just kind of float like, hey, man, just hang, just surf this a little bit. We'll be right back over here in a couple hours.
Yeah,
but, we've also had the benefit of some new members to the community over there, which are the toads. And they enjoy them some squash bugs, some adolescent ones.
Oh God!
Nobody really likes the adults.
They're
hard to look at. They're hard to just they get squashed quite a bit. This thing about squash bugs, they're trying not to get squashed.
I bet those toads tonight are going to have a time.
They might be out there singing tonight.
I might have to
they're the ones that you hear
there.
that sound like sheep or lamb or something. And I'm looking forward to them having a party tonight.
You know what? But also thinking about water and the importance of it for just the animals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're waiting for watering day.
Right. And certain animals like toads and frogs are used to sort of measure viability for life, for human life in regions. Like if they can't make it, we can't make it. So I'm happy to see them, and when people are helping, people are always really fascinated with the toads, because the toads will pop out from underneath the bed of weeds. And some people, for whatever reason, want to move them. Like, no, leave that toad there. I don't know why you feel like you know better where that toad should live. You are in his neighborhood, passing through.
Ask permission.
Leave that guy alone. You're on his front porch. He's not on yours, right? But I see more of them around now, and so that's a good sign. Probably because we've been irrigating, and because they knew squash season was coming, and they like it, and so it's one of my new favorite co-workers is the Couch's spadefoot toad.
Okay, well hold on, what is it? Couch's
spadefoot toad.
Couch's spadefoot toad.
Yeah.
Any other new companions? Any new?
Oh, plenty. A lot of long.
With the water. Yeah.
Have you seen that long whiptail lizard?
Yes.
Do you see how much weight he seems to be gaining?
Oh, hold on. I see several of them. Maybe it's not.
There's one I see all the time.
Okay.
That I nickname him Fat Boy Slim, but he kind of stops, like, and looks at me, and I'm like, hey, and he seems to be coming out of the squash bed, so I guess he might be
Really?
helping
Okay,
out
no, I haven't
with
seen
some
him
of
over
those
there.
toads too. And I'm always like, be careful, man. You're getting a little girthy. Things can see you
Oh,
from
wow.
further away. If I can see you like this all the time, I can imagine these hawks and owls and everybody else can probably see you even better. So, keep it moving. I need you, I need what you're adding
Yeah.
or what you're subtracting. You know. But yeah, there's lots of life out there. I mean, the pollinators are going crazy. The bees are showing up. Like all of that stuff, that environment is a part of our ecosystem that's necessary. And even I was explaining this to somebody who we were talking about water, and they were of the position like, yeah, I'm glad, they're sticking it to these pecan growers for wasting all that water. And and I said, yeah, I used to think like that.
Okay.
I used to think like that until I started to be more involved in the agricultural community and have a little more nuanced understanding of what's going on. On the one hand, I get it. People see pecans, they see chili, they see onions, and they don't see how those things really, in a quantifiable way, return value to the community, right? Because those things generally, as much as they talk about those being traditions here, we don't eat all of that stuff. The majority of people who eat that stuff might not even be in this country, especially when it comes to pecans. So there's I think, a little bit of resentment, as we talk about water. And people have seen this flooding, and they know we're in the desert, and they know there's a high evaporative rate. There's a tendency, I think, to look at that as the main culprit. And I get it, because they do. Alfalfa, like these things take a lot of water, right? And I had to remind this person, I said, a lot of these ag traditions started when people were receiving 4 feet of water.
It's about to change, yeah.
And there wasn't as much of an impact. And it did create economy for this region. Some people benefited greatly, way more than others, but it did create economy and tradition. And another thing that it created was ground cover. I say there's some benefit actually to having these orchards around that we might not recognize, but we might realize if they were not here. There's some benefit to that, right? In terms of carbon sinking, even the ones who don't, in my opinion, do it the best way. The ones who clean the floors of their orchard, because there is a higher evaporative rate there, but because they have the canopy of the trees, there's less release. And there's also the oxygen output of the trees that doesn't necessarily credit out that CO2 or that that evaporative water release, but it's not reflecting back the way that adjacent open fields are, right? Reflecting back sunlight. And it's definitely not doing what dairies were doing. But there is some value in agriculture other than just the economy and the food that it may provide or produce. There's also the ecological benefit of having green spaces. And that's one of the things that I think we all need to sort of realize and come to a reasonable compromise. Because I think the approach should be, how do we better support agriculture in becoming great stewards of water by implementing practices that allow them to be that?
I was thinking, and I'm glad you said that. How can we become, better stewards of water? And so I thought about how, and you know of a pecan, or where there's pecans growing, and they're using regenerative methods
Yes.
to grow them.
Absolutely.
So
On a 135-acre pecan orchard, they have a water treatment system. They use sprinklers, and they're seeing increased yields. And they use cover crops. They use animal herding. All of the things, they're doing it right there in Mesquite, and they're doing it as a demonstration, and they're consulting with other farmers. So those things are happening, and those are mostly incentivized because they're seeing increased yields, right? So I always knew that. Like, if you can show how you could actually make more money doing it this way, you're more likely to attract the larger scale producers to these systems. I would love to see a combination of legislation and incentive to support better infrastructure. Because we're not getting ready to see everybody just disappear and stop using water. Like, that's not going to happen, right? These orchards are not going to do that. These producers who are still living off of it, that's it. Like, they've invested in that. That's their asset. So it's not realistic to expect that for the common good, people are just going to stop, right? But I think it makes sense to start having these conversations in a meaningful way and sort of separate of the politics, which is hard because the politics get in here and it just gets ugly. And you want to take a side, and you see some of the players and you know what they're doing in other spaces. And so all of these things become sort of entangled, right? We have to sort of dissect that, I think, when it comes down to this water issue, because it's once again an environmental issue contributing to the overall crisis of our ecology that we don't have time to play politics with.
When I came home from the farm and did a little cleaning, actually I had to water some plants that were really, really asking for some relief. And I just found myself really thinking about that also. Like, making sure I'm using all of it correctly. Just being really conscientious about that. And if anything, I think that's what, when more people understand and see what's happening on watering day, I have a feeling that will be something that people take with them too. Like, oh yeah, how are we using water correctly?
Are you suggesting like a watering day, volunteer day?
Yes.
Shit. Well, if they know what they're doing. Otherwise, everybody's swimming.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, another episode
Yes.
of Black
English
Vernacular.